Welcome to the Total Wealth Academy radio show. Listen and learn what the wealthiest Americans are doing with their money and time that's different from the middle class. Learn the roadmap to financial and personal success that includes family, fitness, romance, charity, and all the parts of a balanced life. Now, here's your host, real estate investor and mentor, Steve Davis.
Hello and welcome to the Total Wealth Academy radio show. I am your host, Steve Davis, where, as always, we're here together working hard to improve our financial IQ, our financial literacy, if you will, because high school and college don't teach us anything about building wealth. They teach us how to get a job, and that's about it. And even then, there's a lot of jobs where you get a college degree and it really doesn't give you a good return on investment. There's statistics out there where they say, is college, a good investment? And they're all over the place. But I think if you do read some of those, Google them, read some of those, you're going to find out that for most people, college is not a good investment. It doesn't give a good return on investment. But certain people, it does. And primarily, this is the professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, the CPAs, the people where their job, literally engineers, requires a degree. Those people get a pretty good rate of return on their college education. But I read a statistic that over 45 years of working, a college education on average only makes you about $600,000 more than somebody who doesn't have a degree. Well, you divide that by 45 years, that's only about $13,000 a year. $13,000 a year. So that's not a major difference. It's not going to, that's $1,000 a month. It's not going to change your life the way that people say a college education will. It's just, it's hyped. It's a little bit of BS. It's just not effective for the average person. See, if you want to make an extra $13,000 a year, flip a doggone house and make yourself $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 extra a year. Flip one house a year. Again, make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, not $13,000, and you don't need a degree to flip the house. And we're going to talk about flipping today, as I got 12 questions here that I've collected over the years. These are the most common questions that I get about flipping, because one of my pet peeves is when I hear this: I'm getting a $20,000 raise, but I have to move my family to Montana for $20,000. And people do it. They do it. They uproot their family, disrupting school, disrupting their church. They just pick up and leave. Over $20,000 a year. You could flip one house and make more than that and stay right where you're at and be less dependent on corporate America at the same time. It doesn't even make sense to do that. But people do it all the time. Extra few bucks, they uproot the family and move. It's a shame. That's because people have a low self-esteem. They don't think they know how to make money, and most of them don't, any other way than a job. So most people, that's the only way they know how to make money, is trading time for money, which is what a job is. So what this show's about is primarily building a second stream of income. That's the secret to life financially is to have multiple streams of income. Multiple. No less than two, your job and a second stream of income, preferably coming from your real estate, because 9 out of 10 millionaires used real estate to become so. So it's an extremely effective tool for building a second stream of income. And some of the members start off with flipping. They'll actually flip a house, then buy a rental house, flip a house, buy a rental house, flip a house, buy a rental house, and you see the pattern. So don't move your family to another state over a couple grand, 20 grand. It's just, believe in yourself, get educated, and you can make more than that on your own. And you won't be as dependent on the corporation as you were if you took their raise and moved. All right, this is the Total Wealth Academy radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Total Wealth Academy radio show. I am your host, Steve Davis, and my email is open to you. If you have any questions about what I'm covering today, please feel free to email me. It's steve@totalwealthacademy.com, steve@totalwealthacademy.com. And remember that email is open to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't care when you email me. You will get a response from me. I don't have a robot or assistant doing this. It's actually directly to me. We also don't put you on an email list or anything like that. Just, it's a question. I answer it. Do my best to answer it. There are some things I don't know, but I'll tell you. steve@totalwealthacademy.com. So let's go through. I'm trying to convince people, don't move over $20,000. Go flip a house and stay put. Giving you more control of your life and really more than $20,000. But the first question is, do you recommend investing in rehab properties? Do you recommend investing in rehab properties? Absolutely. 99.9% of the deals that I do require rehab. I don't buy turnkey properties. There's really no profit in them. The person who made them turnkey is making all the profit. Not a good investment as a rule. There are exceptions, but they're rare, few and far between. So yes, what I look at is I want to be in the property for 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs. 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs. So if it's a $200,000 house, I want to be all in at 140, 70%. If there are $40,000 worth of repairs, then I've got to get that house for $100,000. $100,000 plus the $40,000 in rehab, that gives me the $140,000. That's my 70 cents on the dollar deal, and that's a good flip. You're going to make somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 on a flip like that. So, yes, I recommend highly. 99.9% of the deals I do require rehab. That's really the only way to really get a good, powerful discount on a piece of property. The next question is, what should investors look for in a rehab property? Well, this is a loaded question because there are different strategies when it comes to rehabbing property and flipping them. And what it usually comes down to is the value of the home that you're flipping. There's very successful members that are flipping homes that are all below $300,000. Literally, they're picking them up for 100, 150, maybe 200, and they're worth 300. So what you look for in a rehab property is the deferred maintenance. That's the key. The key to getting a discount on a property is deferred maintenance. So what should investors look for in a rehab property? That's a tough question to answer. It's kind of an odd question because you're just looking for rehab property. I don't care what condition it's in, because everything can be fixed. People run around going, oh, I would never touch a deal with a foundation problem. Well, I will. Why? Because it's just another number. Okay, it's $4,500 to repair the foundation. I add that into my rehab. I want 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs. I don't care if it's got a bad roof. I don't care if it needs a new AC. I don't care if it needs its foundation work. Doesn't matter. So in other words, there's really nothing to look for specifically in a rehab property. I guess the one thing is to make sure the bones are good. The structure is repairable. But other than that, I really don't care. If the numbers work, I'm going to do the deal, whether it's a $200,000 house or a $1 million house. If the numbers work, I'm going to do the deal. The third question is, why is it a problem when investors get emotionally involved with the property? This is a problem, especially for newbies. What people do is they have a tendency to fall in love with the property. They buy it, they completely rehab it. It's a work of love, and when it's all finished, their ego's in it. Their emotions are in it. And they want to get the highest price possible. And because their ego's in it, they kind of over-rehabbed it. So they've got a lot more expenses in there than they should have had. So those are the two main things that getting emotionally involved with the property, two main problems with getting emotionally involved with the property. You overbuild it, you put in too nice of finishes, and you overprice it because you're mentally attached to it. So don't get emotionally involved with any property. When it comes to rehab, visit other properties in the neighborhood. So let's say you get a property under contract in Happytown subdivision. Go out and look at 5 or 6 for sale properties in Happytown subdivision and look at the types of countertops they have. Look at the types of finishes they have. Look at the types of lighting, ceiling fans, all the little finishing touches, and don't build above that. You don't put an $800 ceiling fan when a $100 one or $150 one will do. Now, what causes investors to overpay for rehab properties? This one is generally they don't get a written bid for the rehab. See, when an agent brings you a deal or a wholesaler brings you a deal, they usually bring you an estimate for repairs. You don't trust that. I'm telling you, if the estimate for repairs is $40,000, it's probably $60,000. I see it all the time. They're 50% below what they actually are. And a lot of people are very cheap and they want to put lipstick on a pig and think they're going to sell it for full price. It's not going to happen. So what causes investors to overpay for rehab properties? Ego is one of them. They get emotionally attached to the deal. That's another danger from the previous question. They get emotionally attached to the deal and they overpay. Or they don't get a written bid for the repairs, and when the written bid does come in, it's 50% higher than what they expected. And there's your overpayment. So make sure that you get a written bid for every repair before you put up hard earnest money. This should be done during your option period. Your option period, you can back out and get your earnest money back if the rehab comes out too high. In other words, the agent told you to be 40, turns out to be 80. That destroys the deal. You back out of the deal, you get your earnest money back. But if it comes out that she said it was 40 and it turns out to be 40, you know the numbers work, it's still a great deal, then the earnest money goes hard at the end of the 5 or 7 day option period. Okay. The next question, why is it a problem when investors move too slowly? This one's simple. Holding costs. Holding costs can be a major factor if you don't keep your general contractor on schedule. You don't keep yourself on schedule. It's all about the velocity of money. You've got to keep the money moving. Don't let it stagnate in one property for an extra 3 months because you didn't get the rehab done quick enough. Make sure that you have written expectations with the general contractor for what's going to be done in what amount of time. And always have a penalty if they finish late. And the penalty should be just take your holding costs, divide it by 30 days. That's your late fee. So if your holding costs are $3,000 a month, divided by 30, that'd be $100 a day. That's the penalty. If they say it's going to be 7 weeks, then at the end of the 7th week, start the penalty. So 7 weeks in 1 day, that's $100 off. 2 days, $200 off. 3 days, $300 off, and so on and so on. So you can move too slowly on these deals. Oh, another one is not being able to figure out what finishes you want to use. And people procrastinating making a decision on what finishes they're going to use in the property. This generally comes from what I warned you about earlier, not visiting other properties in the neighborhood so you know what finishes to use. All right, we'll talk more after the break here on the Total Wealth Academy radio show. Thanks for listening. Talking about the top questions that I get about flipping. We just went over why is it a problem when investors move too slowly. It's primarily the holding costs. They can add up quickly. If your holding costs are $3,000 a month and you wait just 5 months, you just goof off and don't get your deal done for 5 months, good Lord, that's $15,000 right off of your profit. So keep that in mind. You want to move quickly, efficiently, quickly. Yeah, don't take shortcuts. Be cautious of that. Don't take shortcuts. Do the job right. Fast, high quality. The next question is, what problem occurs if investors fail to get a written bid for the repairs before going under contract? Well, this is a question about wholesale deals. A lot of wholesalers out there want you to put up your earnest money without getting a written bid for the repairs. Now, newbies, do not do this. Do not do this. You've got to have a written bid for the repairs and a clearly defined scope of work, so you know the repairs you're getting done that are being done are the ones you want done. So when you fail to get a written bid, then what happens is, as I mentioned, whether it's a wholesaler or a agent, they say, yeah, the rehab's going to be 40 grand, but when you get your written bid, it comes out to $65,000, $70,000, $75,000, and it kills the deal. But you put up hard earnest money, you don't get your earnest money back, even if you back out of the deal. See, when you're dealing with agents, they're regulated by the state. They're much more fair. You're going to have a 5 to 7 day option period that you can buy for $100, $150. During that option period is when you get your inspection and your general contractor bid. And you find out exactly what that rehab is going to cost before the earnest money goes hard and is non-refundable. That way, if let's say on the third day you find out the rehab that was predicted to be 40 is actually 80, and that kills the deal, you back out of the deal and you get your earnest money back. So newbies, I suggest you only deal with people who are going to give you a 5 to 7 day option period. When does this change? After you've done 4 or 5 deals, then you can kind of eyeball a house and tell what the rehab's going to be. Then you can start dealing with wholesalers and putting up hard earnest money, because when they say it's 40, you're going to look at it and go, no, it's not, it's 80. Does the number work with 80? If it does, put up the earnest money, get control of the property, and move forward. So, again, do not, newbies, listen closely, do not put up hard earnest money without a written bid and scope of work for the repairs. Okay. What problems occur when investors fail to vet the contractor? Listen, this is rude, I know, but do you know why most contractors are contractors? Because they can't keep a job. They had to go out on their own. And most of them, it goes back to the 80-20 rule. 80% of the results flow from the top 20% of the people. So if there's 100,000 contractors in greater Houston or greater DFW, does it make sense when I say only 20,000 of them are any good? How do you find that 20,000? That's vetting the contractor. You make sure that you check their website, check for reviews, and get referrals. 3 referrals before you ever do business with any contractor. I don't care if you're a member of Total Wealth Academy and you're dealing with our contractors, get references and call them. I talk to so many people who get references and never call them, or they call them and leave a message. They never really talk to them, and then they go ahead and use that contractor. They write them a check and they never see them again. So do not ever write a check to a contractor until after you have vetted them and know they're high quality, they move quickly, and they can be trusted. So again, look for reviews on the internet, get 3 referrals, sometimes even go look at one of the properties that they're currently working on. That's something I did on a regular basis, not every time, but anytime I got a new contractor, I guess I really did do it. Every time I got a new contractor, I went and saw his work, if that was part of my vetting process. All right. What problems occur when investors fail to put in a penalty if the contractor does not finish on time? Oh, this one's, I kind of covered this before, but yeah, contractors will, like the first day, here's what's going to happen. If you don't have a penalty, the first day you go there, there's going to be 6 people working on the house, and you're going to be pumped up and just, they're killing it. They're taking out windows, they're putting in new windows, they're replacing the AC, they're replacing the roof, and that, like I said, there's 6 people there. But you go back about 3 weeks later and there's 1 person there. That's frustrating. And what the contractor has done is they've gone and taken their people to another newer deal, because there's no penalty for not finishing on time. They're going to pull their people off of your deal and put them on to somebody who does have a penalty for not finishing on time. So do not ever do a deal with a contractor without a penalty for not finishing on time. Okay. What happens when investors overbuild for the neighborhood, making the house too nice and spending too much on finishes? This just eats into your budget, and it can be massive amounts of money. There's $800 ceiling fans and there's $200 ceiling fans. And some people go in and they'll go into a neighborhood where everybody's got $200 ceiling fans. They buy a house, put in $800 ceiling fans. Guess what? Waste of money. Total waste of money. Remember this rule. If you buy a $350,000 house for $350,000 and you put $50,000 in repairs, upgrades I should say, how much is that house worth? $350,000. Upgrades to houses do not increase the value. Remember, it's based off of comparable sales, not on the condition of the property. Now, is the condition part of the evaluation? Yes. But if you buy a perfect property and every other house in the neighborhood just like it sold for $350,000, you pay $350,000 and you put $50,000 worth of upgrades in, that house is still worth $350,000. So don't be a fool that way. As I said before, every time you go into a new subdivision, go look at the houses for sale, see what type of finishes they use, and use the same finishes. Now, here we go. I touched on this too. What happens when investors try to sell the house over the neighborhood average? It slows down the sale and increases holding costs. It's that simple. It costs you money. See, what you do is you go on to MLS, the multiple listing service, and get your agent or your wholesaler to find out what the average days on market are for the average sale price and what the days on market for the high sale price is. And what you're going to find is the average sale price closes in 30 days and the high takes 90 to 120 days. So you're making $10,000 extra, but you're spending $12,000 in holding costs. You didn't make any extra money. You lost $2,000 by overpricing the house. You want to put your property on the market at the average for the neighborhood, even if you completely rehabbed it. All right, this is the Total Wealth Academy radio show. We'll talk more after the break. Thanks for listening. Show. I am your host, Steve Davis, where we're answering questions that people ask me about flipping. And these are the most common that I get. And I just collected a list of 12 of them. We've hit 10 of them. So do not, in the final one, I just want to reiterate, when you sell a flip house, go with the average for the neighborhood and get it sold in 30 days, not 120 days. You've got to keep in mind your holding costs, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. All right, the next question is, what happens when investors don't use the right type of mortgage, such as a bridge loan or hard money loan? This one's an easy answer. They put too much down. And this decimates their rate of return, their cash-on-cash rate of return. It slows the wealth building process. Because if they're here's an example. Remember that $200,000 house I described at the beginning of the show? That house was about $20,000 down total, $20,000 out of pocket. If I'd used a conventional loan, that deal would have been $68,000, more than 3 times as much down. And that's the big mistake that newbies make. They don't educate themselves first. They don't learn about hard money. They don't learn about bridge loans. And they go out and they go to Wells Fargo or they go to Chase or Bank of America and get a loan for a house. Those guys rip you off. rip you off, causing you to put 3 to 4 times as much down on each house, which where you could have bought 4 houses, you can only buy 1. That's going to slow your wealth building process dramatically. You definitely want to use hard money loans anytime you pick up a rehab property. Why? Because a hard money loan includes the rehab money in it. A conventional loan does not. Doing a conventional loan, you have to pay for all the rehab out of your own pocket. That's why that down payment, the total out of pocket, went up so much. The difference between 20 grand and 68 grand, that's a huge difference. And it really, again, slows the wealth building process. So make sure you take a course on real estate investing like ours, where you learn how to use hard money or bridge loans. And then the last popular question is, what happens if you use low quality parts to save money? I want you to think about this, please. It's a wedding, and the bride steps out in the most beautiful white dress, and she is just unbelievably beautiful, perfect. However, there's a small black spot on her dress in the lower left-hand corner. What is the first thing that you see when she walks out? The answer is the black spot. Humans will see the exception before they see anything else. It helped save us when we were cavemen, but we adapted to that. Our eyes notice anything that's out of place, such as a tiger in the grass. It's the first thing you're going to see is that tiger. The first thing you're going to see is that black spot. The first thing that the buyers are going to see, you chose shoddy, cheap materials. They're going to notice it. And that is your black spot. And the problem is, if you use cheap products, $20 ceiling fans, $5 faucets, things like that, that's the first thing they see. And it's not one black spot, it's black spots in every room, because you cheaped yourself out. Do not cheap yourself out. And remember what I said at the beginning, don't overdo it either. Don't overdo it either. But use quality parts that are equal to what everything else in the neighborhood is. So it goes back to that rule. As soon as you buy a property in a new neighborhood, go look at all the other houses for sale in that neighborhood to see what types of finishes they use. And don't build above that. Don't build above that. It's just a waste of money and time. Waste of money and time. Okay, those are the 12 most popular questions I get about flipping. But if you've got a different question, please feel free to email me anytime. It's steve@totalwealthacademy.com. steve@totalwealthacademy.com. You can also find us online at totalwealthacademy.com. And if you want to find out about our classes on how to invest in real estate and build a second stream of income, go to totalwealthacademy.com. The first step for anybody that's thinking about taking our courses is take the free sample class first. That way you can see our educational techniques. You'll learn quite a bit as well. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long, and there are 16 major points that most people are not aware of in that workshop on how to build wealth with real estate. But we'll show you the 4 ways that real estate makes you money. We'll show you why 95% of Americans fail to retire. It's an extremely information-packed hour and 15 minutes. We have to talk fast to keep it in that hour and 15. So, again, email me. It's steve@totalwealthacademy.com. Steve at TotalWealthAcademy.com. Okay, got a question here from a Steve. Steve, thanks for the kind words about the show. What is cash on cash rate of return? Okay, that was because I believe this question is here because I mentioned that if you put too much down on a property, it cuts your rate of return dramatically. In the example of the $200,000 house for $20,000 down, that deal made me about $400 a month. Now, 400 times 12 months is $4,800 a year. And what you do to get your cash on cash rate of return is you divide that by your total out of pocket, in this case $20,000. So that gave me a 24% rate of return. What you want to think is where your money's at, your IRA, are you making a 24% rate of return? The answer is no. But look at it with $68,000 down. That's going to be about a 9% rate of return, not a 24% rate of return. See what I mean? It destroys your cash on cash rate of return when you have to put that much money down on every deal. And then your equity's going up as well. So you eventually, the first year I calculate my cash on cash rate of return based on my total out of pocket. But starting the second year, I evaluate it based on equity. If I've got $50,000 equity in the deal, then I want to divide my cash flow by the $50,000. Now that's going to cut your cash on cash rate of return down dramatically, but it gives you a true view of what's going on. See, a lot of people think we buy these houses and keep them for the rest of our lives. We don't. We're generally trading them, I'd say, between 5 and 7 years because there's just too much equity sitting there not to sell it. In other words, we can sell it and go buy 4 houses instead of just owning the one. I hope that makes sense. So keep that in mind. The first year, compare it to your total out of pocket. But after that, you've got to compare it to the equity to see the real rate of return. And then when that equity gets too high, you need to sell that property, take that equity, 1031 exchange it, and go buy 4 houses, get rid of the one, and buy 4. Okay, this has been the Total Wealth Academy radio show. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Total Wealth Academy radio show. Please remember that this show is for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as legal, tax, or investing advice. Always get a professional opinion before making any investment decisions. To find out more about coaching and consulting at Total Wealth Academy, visit TotalWealthAcademy.com and attend one of our free sample classes on real estate investing. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.